Welcome back. Well, with a turbulent year wrapping up and a volatile one likely ahead, time for a Taking Stock roundtable. Sean Speer is editor-at-large at The Hub. Armine Yalnizyan is Atkinson Fellow on the future of workers. Thanks to you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us. With you.
All right, I'm going to start with, and I'll start with you, Armine, and then Sean, jump in. I was going to ask what's the big story of 2025, and then I decided I was also going to answer it for you, and that is a trade war. But I wanted to ask, in the context of this huge upheaval we've seen related to Liberation Day and the change in our trade relationship with the U.S., what you think is the most important aspect of that this past year? Armine, you kick it off.
First of all, this sense of betrayal by the people that used to be our closest neighbors, and the idea that no deal is possible in the future because you just don't know what's going to happen next. Secondarily, the growing focus on trying to invite more investment into the country, obviously because we might face a huge wave of disinvestment, but a super, maybe an overwrought level of openness to investment from any source with no guardrails on it, and less focus, I think, on the human aspect of what some of these things could mean, both in terms of the number of jobs that are available, but also the impact on things like care.
So interesting. And
I agree completely. I would just frame it slightly differently. In some ways, I think the biggest development in 2025 is not just the Trump tariffs and provocations. It's in a way, our reaction to it, particularly under the leadership of Mark Carney, might be characterized, Amanda, as a kind of return of economic orthodoxy. The previous 10 years under Justin Trudeau's government, there was a greater focus on issues of equity and redistribution, and I would argue kind of subordination of orthodox thinking when it comes to markets and investment and all the rest. And I think it's fair to say the way the Carney government has reacted has been a kind of return to basics, as Armine says, a focus on investment attraction, a focus on trying to boost investment and economic growth, and probably at the expense of some of the issues that Prime Minister Trudeau championed in his time in office.
And maybe some other issues. I mean, I want to dig in a little bit to what Armine said, because I thought what I was going to say, Sean, is I think you'll probably agree that that sort of shift in tone attracting investment is one of the big changes. That it comes with new costs, I think, is worth discussing for a second. And Armine, let's just talk about what you're talking about when we say, because we're in this weird world. Our government wants to attract up to $1 trillion of private investment by setting the stage with industrial policy. This is not your grandfather's economics textbook. So it's a very interesting kind of market, a belief in the market system and capitalism married to nationalistic policy from government. It's a weird marrying to my mind.
Super weird. I agree with you. I think this is not getting back to basics. I think it's oversteering to make up for the things that markets say they want. And now our markets are, at risk. But the bigger story also of 2025 and moving into 2026, both in the United States and Canada, has been affordability, right? People have been out of their minds with the cost of things because, yes, wages have improved, but they haven't kept up with the cost of the basics like housing and groceries. Basically, the most basic things you can imagine. Yeah. Well, I've been really struck by the fact that within CPI in Canada, one of the fastest growing and consistently fast growing aspects of care, aspects of affordability has been the cost of out-of-pocket purchases of health services, specifically eye and dental care, but also we all know there's not enough care involved through the publicly subsidized system, and we're spending more on it. So, we might be getting more fiscal restraint on public spending, but we're spending more as a society on care. So that, to me, is going to be a huge, it's not the insurance problem of the United States, but it is an affordability and cost problem, and it's accelerating because even though Carney has led off with his good foot, which is the investment portfolio, and he's dealing with an economic crisis, he's skipping over the care crisis that in survey after survey, Canadians say is their second most important concern.
Sean?
Yeah, great point. Just 2 points, if I may. First of all, to Armine's point, I think a sleeper issue of 2025 is just as the parliamentary session ended, the Alberta government passed its reform bill, which involves essentially the creation of two-tier healthcare in Alberta. So watch for that in 2026. It's a big development. I suspect provincial policymakers across the country will be following to see the outcomes from this experiment in Alberta. But just secondarily, to Armine's point about affordability, I think that's what makes the Carney government so interesting, and why I said earlier that it is a kind of return to orthodoxy. Its budget was focused solely on the macroeconomy,
yes,
with less focus on the microeconomy. And it seems to me the Prime Minister is making a bet that more investment, more economic activity will ultimately come to address those microeconomic concerns. It's a big bet from a political point of view, but from an economic point of view, it is going back to, I think, the way that governments thought about the relationship between the macro and the micro for the better part of the past 30 or 40 years.
Okay, we've only got about 30 seconds each for what you're watching in 2026. Is it still trade? Is it still affordability, Armine?
Holy moly, three things that I'm watching for. Number one is private equity in healthcare, and I'm going to be talking a lot about that in the coming year. Number two is the AI bubble, and whether that's going to collapse and what that's going to mean in global systems. And number three is, can we get any kind of trade certainty, and will we ever make up for the lost investments that are bound to come down the road?
Yeah, three good ones. Sean?
Yeah. Same, especially as the Republican Party heads into midterm elections. Will the Trump administration be more inclined to win-win types of trade outcomes, or are we going to continue to see protectionism out of Washington, which of course is bad for investment, bad for output, and ultimately bad for Canada's economy?
So good to have you both for this. Appreciate your thoughts. Sean Speer, Armine Yalnizyan, thanks to you both.
Thanks for inviting us.
Armine Yalnizyan is Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Work. Sean Speer, Editor-at-Large at The Hub.